Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? Admin Synergy coming to you guys here today with another deck tech. So today we are going to be taking a look at a standard deck, and it is red-green aggro. Now, this deck is going to be modeling after the red-green aggro decks that we saw before Return to Ravnica was out in that season of standard, where red-green aggro decks and the Delver decks were pretty dominant for the standard scene. And this deck is equally as aggressive. It's a pretty aggressive deck. It's only going to get better once Gatecrash comes out and we have our Shocklands, potentially a lot of Gruul cards as well. But overall, it's a really fun deck. It's really aggressive, and it's just quick-paced. We want to just bash out our opponents before they're able to do anything and just have bigger things than any other aggro deck. So, before we get to taking a look at what this deck looks like, if you guys have any suggestions for decks that you would like to see, please leave them down in the comments below. Alright, so like always, we are going to be taking a look at the land base first here. So we have our Rootbound Crags. So this is going to be a playset for us, providing red or green to our mana base. We also have Kessig Wolf Run as far as utility lands go, and this is going to be a 2-of in our build. So it lets us use up our mana and give a creature +X+0 and trample until the end of the turn, which is always useful. Alternate way to win the game, essentially. And then we have our basics. So we have 11 basic forests. So I'm going to break these up based on the artworks that I have. So we have 6 here. We have another 3, and then 2 more, so 11. And then we have 6 mountains. So overall, our green is going to be a lot heavier than our red in this deck. We do have some double red spells, like our Hellrider. But ultimately, our mana base is going to work, especially with a little bit of fixing that we have. So now we are going to take a look at pretty much everything else that we have in our deck here. So we have Flinthoof Boar starting off with creatures, and essentially he's going to be a 3/3 for 2 for us. So +1/+1 as long as we control a mountain, and for 1 red he can gain haste until the end of the turn. So if we can go like Strangleroot Geist turn 2, turn 3 Flinthoof Boar, give it haste, especially if it's a 3/3, that's a pretty sizable amount of damage that we're able to do to our opponent early on. So playset of Flinthoof Boar. From there, we have our Strangleroot Geist, so 2/1 for double green, haste and undying. So really average card as far as green aggro goes, especially green heavy aggro. So playset of Strangleroot Geist. Undying makes him pretty nice up against other creatures. Obviously, Terminus is going to trump him as well as Pillar of Flame, but we are going to hope to not run into those cards, but if we do, we can rebound with other creatures that we have in the deck. So, playset of Strangleroot Geist. We also have Borderland Ranger, which is going to allow us to search for our mountains in a sense where we are going to be able to play off of Flinthoof Boar being a 3/3. Also getting more sources of red for stuff like Hellrider or some of the other spells that we have that are in red. But ultimately, the Borderland Ranger is going to fix for us on top of just being a 2/2 for 3. So we're running 3 Borderland Rangers in the build. We have Huntmaster of the Fells as a 3-of. One of them is in the sideboard as well, whenever we are going to need more bodies and a little bit of life gain as well. But 2/2 for 2, he's going to gain us 2 life and give us another 2/2 whenever he enters the battlefield or flips back to this side. And if no spells were cast in a given turn at the beginning of that next upkeep, he's able to flip turns into a 4/4, deals 2 damage to target player and target creature that they control. So the Huntmaster is overall pretty solid. Like I said, we have another one in the sideboard. We have Hellrider being a 3/3 for 4, double red, which is kind of awkward because we don't have the Shocklands or like more dual lands for this deck, but even still, it works with the fixing that we have. So haste whenever a creature we control attacks, Hellrider is going to deal 1 damage to defending player. So we have a playset of Hellrider. Overall, just a really stompy card, just really perfect for this type of a deck. We also have Thragtusk, so Thragtusk is just absolutely huge as well. 5/3 for 5, enters the battlefield and we gain 5 life, leaves the battlefield and we get a 3/3. So overall, a perfect card to have up against numerous decks, aggro and control alike, especially control, where if they board wipe, we still get our 3/3 back out of it. So play set of Thragtusk. We have Wolfir Silverheart as a 2-of in our deck, so 5/5, or 5 cost 4/4, should I say, with Soul Bond that gives paired creatures +4/+4, so he's going to be an 8/8 himself and give a +4/+4 buff to another creature that we control, which is pretty solid overall. Running Thundermaw Hellkite would be a little bit awkward with the mana base as it is, because we're trying to go green heavy and we don't want to go really heavy with red as well. So Wolfir Silverheart was a more appropriate card to have as our 5 spot here, while Thundermaw Hellkite is a better card. Wolfir Silverheart ends up working out a little bit better for us. So we have 2 of the Wolfir Silverheart. We also have Garruk Relentless, which can create 2/2s for us, and he can also deal 3 damage to a target creature, and then that creature deals damage equal to its power to Garruk. So Garruk is nice because he's able to deal with cards like Is It Staticaster that are sometimes a little bit awkward to have to deal with, especially with the Nightshade Peddler interaction that it has. So Garruk's good for that, getting rid of Is It Staticaster, but ultimately he's a really quick-paced planeswalker to get out onto the battlefield. He creates tokens, so that's always good. You have more bodies to either attack or block, and ultimately he just lets you play a better tempo. Whenever we're playing up against decks where we want to have a little bit bigger of creatures, or we can commit to having a little bit slower of a tempo card like Garruk Primal Hunter, we will side in Primal Hunter over Garruk Relentless. He's a little bit slower, he's more costly as far as mana goes, but he creates bigger creatures and has better abilities. So 2 Garruk Relentless main, 2 Primal Hunter sideboard. And then we have our other spells, our burn spells and stuff. So we have Pillar of Flame, so play set a Pillar of Flame, allowing us to burn out our opponent's creatures. Deals 2 damage to target creature or player. If a creature dealt damage that way would die during this turn, it's exiled instead, so good against Drops Messengers, Grave Crawlers. We also have Searing Spear, so deals 3 damage for 2 mana at an instant speed. Deals with stuff like Hellriders, also Thragtusks, and a lot of our opponent's creatures, but ultimately it can be used as just a burn spell directly at our opponent. And then the last set of cards that we have here, we have Abundant Growth as a 3-of, so it enchants a land and we get to draw a card whenever it enters the battlefield, and the enchanted land taps for 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. So this is going to help us out with our mana, allowing us to play the double red spells like Hellrider, and also have mana open for stuff like Searing Spear, Pillar of Flame, also the Huntmaster of the Fells as well. But ultimately, it just lets us fix a little bit. It lets us draw as well, which is always good. So it's going to help us out by just accelerating us in card drawing a little bit, but the fixing is a little bit more important than anything else. But that's the main board that we have here, so now we are going to take a look at the sideboard options that we have for the deck and wrap this up. So first off, we have Aerial Predation. So Aerial Predation lets us destroy target creature with flying and we gain 2 life. So I have this as a 2-of in the sideboard, so it's good against Thundermaw Hellkite, Angel of Glory's Rise, Angel of Serenity, and also Falkenroth Aristocrat if they don't have a way to regenerate it. But the Aerial Predation is nice because if we go with a removal spell like Searing Spear or Pillar of Flame on something like the Aristocrat, and they're able to regenerate it once and don't have a way to do it again, they use up their Regenerate Shield, we can use Aerial Predation, get rid of it. Ultimately, there are a lot of cards that are really annoying as far as flying creatures go, so we want to have an outlet to be able to deal with them pretty effectively. There's also Crushing Vines as well, but there aren't really a whole lot of artifacts that are in the format, so Aerial Predation was a little bit nicer because it lets us gain a little bit of life, which can be kind of a counterbalance up against other aggro decks. We also have Bonfire of the Damned, which lets us deal with a lot of really small creatures pretty effectively, so we can deal with a bunch of 1/1s that our opponent's making just to block our creatures while they stall. Also up against other aggro decks, getting rid of their aggro elements as well. 1 Bonfire is pretty key. We have Garruk Primal Hunter as a 2-of in the sideboard, like I mentioned before and explained. Whenever we want to have that outlet of creating bigger things. Our Garruk Primal Hunter is going to be key, as well as up against matchups where they can't really deal with our Planeswalkers very well. Or at least they don't have very many outlets to deal with our Planeswalkers. He's going to be key, but creating bigger things is going to be nice, but he's a little bit slower. He's 5 mana, triple green, which shouldn't be too awkward for this build, but there's always that awkward situation where you have like double red or something and just one source of green, or situations like that. But Garruk Primal Hunter is nice for anything that's a little bit slower, and we don't really have to worry about stuff early on. We also have that one Huntmaster of the Fells that is in the side for matchups where we need more creatures. We need a little bit of life gain as well. So one Huntmaster. We also have Yeva, Nature's Herald. So this is a 2-of in the sideboard, and I really love this card. It's a 4/4 for 4 with Flash, and you can cast green creature cards as though they have Flash. So I really like this card up against other aggro matchups because you have that key 4/4 for 4 that you can flash in as a response after your opponent's attacking. But the other nice thing about it is up against control, whenever they're playing their Wraths, if they commit all of their mana into a Wrath, you're able to flash in Yeva after that spell resolves, like at the end of your opponent's turn, and bash in for 4 the next turn. It's also equally as good, especially if your opponent's trying to cast like Supreme Verdict once Yeva's already out, and then you can cast like Strangleroot Geist and have the Undying trigger off of that. Hopefully your opponent's not able to do anything else, but there have been situations where I flashed in Undying creatures on top of Yeva and been able to work it out where I have my Undying creature, especially like with Strangleroot Geist, I can swing in with a little bit bigger of a Strangleroot Geist and then still have mana open to do other things like play a Planeswalker or something like that. But ultimately, Yeva is really strong. It's a card that not a lot of people play, and you don't really see a whole lot of, but it's a really powerful card to have in the sideboard, especially with some of the matchups that we can run into. We also have Ground Seal as a 3-of in our sideboard, so it restricts the use of graveyard interactions, so cards in graveyards can't be the targets of spells or abilities, and whenever it enters the battlefield, it lets us draw a card. So like the Abundant Growth, it's going to serve its purpose, but it's also going to let us draw a card, which is something that we want to have. Card draw is always nice. So 3 Ground Seals. We have 1 Zealous Conscripts to be able to take our opponent's things, Planeswalkers, other creatures, anything big that they have, and use it against them, and it also has haste on its own. We also have 1 Naturalize, being able to get rid of artifacts or enchantments, mainly enchantments. The Tension Spheres, Oblivion Rings are annoying. So 1 Naturalize, and then just 2 Pyreheart Wolf. So the Pyreheart Wolf is nice up against other aggro matchups, and again, anything where your opponent's trying to make like a bunch of small dudes to stall the game. So whenever it attacks, each creature you control can't be blocked this turn except by 2 or more creatures, so it's going to force your opponent to block with multiple creatures, and oftentimes a lot of your creatures are just going to get through either way and deal damage to your opponent. But it also has Undying, which is nice, so it's going to be a nice buffer up against stuff like Supreme Verdict. It's going to be resilient. It's not going to be able to be dealt with that easily, but there's still ways to deal with it. But it's a nice card to have, and originally it started off with Nightbird's Clutches, but then I switched it to the Pyreheart Wolf just because the Wolf did exactly pretty much the same, and it was another body with Undying that could last through Supreme Verdict, which was something that was important. But ultimately, it serves pretty much the same purpose as Nightbird's Clutches. But that is the main board and sideboard that I have here for you guys for Red-Green Aggro. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this deck. I kind of made it last a little bit longer than I wanted to as far as the length of video goes. But if you guys enjoyed this deck, I hope you like, favorite, and subscribe for more Magic the Gathering content. But until next time, guys, have yourselves a wonderful, fun-filled Magic the Gathering day.